character, teamwork, hard work, perseverance, greatness, success, failures, motivation, humility. Those are things that this game has really taught me.
I love the game of football because there's nothing like it. I mean, the challenge, the discipline, the teamwork.
Not only what you did on the field, but how you carry yourself off the field. All this comes into a package, and they say, well, you know, I could be like that too, or I can do the same things that he did. And it really makes me feel good that I'm an example for other people.
I think honor, and I think integrity. Those two things, I've always wanted to be true to the game.
You learn in the game to be accountable, and I think for my kids, just teaching them how to be accountable, and maybe they won't play the game of football, but just being accountable for things in life.
Working together and learning the responsibility of not only your within yourself and your job and your responsibility yet, but working with other people next to you.
I believe so many people go to the grave empty without ever fulfilling their potential. So part of my life assignment and what I do even with my children is help them take your unique gifts and attempt to become the best at it.
Football is such an incredible game.
It was a passion. You have to respect people, and they got to respect you.
There's so many things that I learned from the game: discipline, respect, perseverance, resiliency, all the things that is really what sports is about.
I want to use my election into the Hall of Fame for 2014 in order to me further serving the community in a different way. And I accept that challenge head first.
Honor the heroes of the game.
Preserve its history.
And promote the values of the game.
To celebrate excellence everywhere.
Well, go ahead. Welcome to all of you. That was the class of 2014, the most recently enshrined members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Joe Horrigan. I'm Vice President of Museum Selection Process and Chief Communications Officer here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We have a special guest that I'll introduce to you in just a few minutes, but before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about what we hope to do here today. First of all, we hope to have a good time. Everybody feel like they're going to have a good time? Yeah, good, all right. We're going to have a good time, but we're going to also make this something that I hope you'll take with you and you'll experience today, something that will last with you for a lifetime. We're talking about character, building character. We're going to talk about what we call the 6 pillars of character. And those are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Now there's lots of other good quality characteristics we want to aspire to, but these are the ones we're going to focus on today. We're going to do that by using the life experiences of a Pro Football Hall of Famer. We're going to talk a little bit about his pro football career, but we're going to talk more about how you can be a Pro Football Hall of Famer, or a Hall of Famer, I should say, in your everyday life, because you can. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And who are we? We've told you who we are. We're going to tell the rest of you here sitting together who you are. We got a lot of different schools here joining us live, and we also have video conference in several schools. And we're going to do a little shout out here. Let's welcome, first of all, our live audiences. Wayandale High School from Apple Creek, Ohio. Are you here? All right. Very good. John Adams from Cleveland. Are you here? I don't know. They're not here yet. Okay. Early College Academy from Canton, Ohio. Shout out. All right. STEAM Academy from Canton, Ohio. All right. Altitude Academy from Canton, Ohio. Oh, we got some lively ones. And Sheffield Middle School, are you here? All right, whoa, there's a good one. All right. Nobody's going to be sleeping in this group here today, well, I'll tell you. Joining us through video conferencing, we have Lincourt School from Syracuse, New York. Are you on with us? All right. I hope that's not a small room. How about Minshew Elementary from McKinney, Texas? Oh, sounds like the whole state of Texas is there. That's great. Wilson High School from Florence, South Carolina. And that's terrible because that's Harry's hometown. Oh, okay. How about, well, we know Alfred Rush Academy from Florence, South Carolina is connected, but we can't get audio with them, but welcome them. Let's welcome Alfred Rush Academy, okay? And how about Williams Middle School from Florence, South Carolina? We're having a little trouble getting connected with these folks. All right, and then we have another one, and we're going to welcome Williams Middle School, and let's welcome South Florence High School because they're a view only. They're not hooked with audio either. So let's welcome those other two schools if you. All right. Now, for those of you who understand this stuff, I don't, but I've been told, if you're using social media today, use hashtag Heart of H-O-F-R, Hall of Famer. Heart of H-O-F-R if you're using social media today. Okay, we have a very special guest, as I said. You know, you chuckle. I don't know this social media stuff. Come on. I got gray hair, for goodness sake. Social media. The word social, I understand. Media, I understand. But together, I don't get it. But we'll work on that. All right. Our special guest today, who is much better with social media than I am, is a Hall of Famer. He was enshrined into the class of 2006. But Harry Carson is more than just a Hall of Famer. Harry Carson is a man who hopefully will share with you life experiences today that you'll take with you as you move on in your life. But just as a little background, Harry started as a defensive end in college and never missed a game in 4 seasons at South Carolina State. He was selected by the New York Giants in the 4th round of the draft in 1976. He immediately became a starter as a rookie and made the all-rookie team. He was an emotional team leader. He was captain of the New York Giants. He led all Giants defenders in tackles, 5 seasons, made 9 Pro Bowls, which 9 out of 13 seasons. 13 seasons, first of all, is a very long career in pro football, and to be a Pro Bowl player in 9 of those seasons is amazing. He had a great single game in 1982 on Monday Night Football, which if you're going to have a great game, do it on Monday Night Football because everybody's watching. In that game, he had 20 solo tackles. Now, for anybody that knows a little bit about football, to have 20 tackles by yourself is amazing. Then he assisted on 5 others. During that season, he accumulated 14 opponents, or during his career, he accumulated 14 opponents' fumble recoveries. A great inside linebacker, a ferocious run stopper. Later in his career, he was joined by 2 other great New York Giants players, in Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks. They became maybe the best-known linebacker trio in pro football during that day and one of the great all-time trios in the history of the game. And I mentioned 1986. Harry had a great season for the Giants with 118 tackles in the regular season and 23 in the playoffs. He recorded his 9th of his 11 career interceptions, had 2 quarterback sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, and the Giants went on to defeat the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 21. So a great player, as you can see. Carson was also a first or second team All-Pro 7 times, Harry?
Let's see.
Maybe we'll give him another one. Why not? We can write history any way we want. But more importantly, I mentioned that Harry was a great college football player, but he wasn't just an athlete. He was a student athlete. He earned his degree while he was in college. And he earned his degree knowing that pro football was maybe something he could aspire to, but maybe not. But more importantly, he realized education was going to be very, very important to him. I'm going to ask our AV folks now if we can just show a quick film highlight of Harry's career to give you an idea of what a great football player he was. Then we're going to get into some of the real character issues.
All year for, okay? 60 minutes. All we got for 60 minutes, all right? We'll be world champions, all right? Let's go.
The honor of making the Hall of Fame is great, but it was even greater to have the opportunity to play in a league with 18,000 individuals, and they're some of the best individuals I've ever encountered. We'd get on the field and we'd fight tooth and nail, and we'd try to knock each other out, and then we'd walk off the field and pat each other on the rear end and say, congratulations, or hang in there. And at that point, I realized to play this game, you have to be something special. You have to be dedicated. You have to have a hunger. You have to be committed to playing the game. And I committed myself to playing the game. I'm excited about being that person to be able to represent any football player who snapped on that chin strap. As I enter the Hall of Fame, I take so many people with me, my teammates, my family, my close friends, my coaches. I take my ancestors, I take my children, but most importantly, I take the fans who have encouraged me game after game after game.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hall of Famer Harry Carson. Doesn't seem like so long ago that you were on the stage unveiling this bronze bust with your presenter.
Yeah, you know, it seems like it was like yesterday that it happened, but it was probably, you know, obviously to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame is the highlight of any player's life, and it's not really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because how many people get to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame? You know, when I look at this bust, I'm floored, because since 1925 and the creation of professional football, or the NFL, out of the many thousands of men who have played, I am the 231st player to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And that's from a guy who quit the team when he first went out for football as a ninth grader. I quit because, you know, I had, I think, different motives for wanting to play. It wasn't because I loved playing. I remember standing by a fence in Florence, South Carolina, and I'm giving a shout out to the folks in Florence, but I was standing by a fence at Wilson High School, and players were walking off the field, and they were dirty, sweaty, bloody, and you could smell them, you know? As they were walking off the field, you know, they basically stank, you know? But all the girls were up at by the locker room, and I thought to myself, I want to be a part of that. And that was really the reason why I started, because of girls, you know, uniform girls. It was like a chick magnet and all of that stuff, you know. But I really didn't have my priorities straight. I didn't prepare. I showed up. It was like a shock to my system when I started running all over the place, doing grass drills, cutaways, sprints, and then we started hitting, and that's when I sort of knew this was not for me. And I quit the team. And I didn't really like the taste of quitting in my gut, and so you know, I wound up playing boys club football, and then I came back the next year, and I hung in there, and I made it. And when I found that I was elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I thought to myself, oh my God, you know, what if I had stayed, you know, and stayed out of football and and not played? There would not be this guy who is the 231st player to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, you know, I learned a very valuable lesson just through that experience. And that was, I mean, if you want something, you have to be dedicated. You have to be committed. And you have to prepare. And you have to give your all. And you have to not necessarily strive to be a Hall of Famer, but just strive to be the best that you can be. And that's what this is. I was not the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't even the most talented. But for whatever reason, I made the right choices, I persevered, I dedicated myself, and I worked my rear end off to be number 231.
It's important, too, I think, when you talk about that, and we've talked about it, that as a member of a team, when you join a team, you have teammates, and it's incumbent upon you to show respect to your teammates, to assume the responsibility of doing your part for them. Can you talk a little bit about how that sense of teamwork was instilled in you at an early age, and how it benefited you?
Well, when I played, for whatever reason, guys who I played with in high school sort of gravitated to me. I don't know whether it was because they looked at me as someone who had really good ability, or I don't know, they just sort of gravitated to me. And I realized that what I said, those guys were going to follow. And so I had to make certain that I made good choices, or I said the right things for them to make sure that, we sort of stayed on the right path. And then I went on to college. I had really good mentors, guys who were leading by example, and because I saw certain qualities in them, I wanted to follow them. And so once they left, then the responsibility sort of fell on my shoulders, and so 2 of my 4 years at South Carolina State, I was a captain. And so I had to basically keep guys in line when they wanted to play around the night before the game. I had to make certain that they were prepared, behaving. And then I went on to the Giants, and I think guys who I played with with the Giants recognized certain leadership qualities about me, and they sort of gravitated toward me, and I always put the team above the individual, because the team is the most important thing. And if I saw something that was out of line or something that should not be going on, I would call individuals out on it. I would go to them and work out. I was sort of like a mediator, and an extension of the head coach. And if the head coach was working us too hard, I'd go to the head coach and I'd sort of advocate on behalf of the players. So I was sort of like a, captain, advocate, whatever you want to call it. And you hear a lot about bullying now in sports. If there was bullying when I played, it would never have happened, because for me, that was my team, and I took ownership of that team, and I wanted to make certain that the guys were comfortable playing, and everybody had fun. But we worked hard. But we also we played hard when it was that time to play, and we had fun together, because when you're a part of a team, it's like a fraternity. It's like a fellowship. You bond together, and you spend so much time together, and you basically become brothers.
You talk about respect. We hear that often. We hear on television. I want them to respect me. Respect is earned, isn't it?
It is earned, and you have to respect someone before they respect you. And you can't make somebody respect you, but you control what you do. And when you give respect, respect comes back to you. And one of the things that I've always done on the football field, I've never tried to show an opponent up. I've always gone out, I've played, I've never talked trash to guys, because I've sort of been on both sides of the fence. I've been a Super Bowl champion, but I also know what it's like to lose like 44-7. It's a very humbling experience. And, when you think that you're up, at some point, you'll find that there are teams out there and individuals out there who will humble you. I don't know if any of you saw the game last night. And, you know, Dallas was sort of on a roll, and Washington sort of came in, took it to them. And I think that, you know, Dallas is a little humbled this morning. I had all my Cowboy friends, you know, texting me last week after they beat the Giants. How about them Cowboys? And, you know, not to get too personal here, but, you know, when Washington won last night, I just sent a text. I said, wow. Yeah, you know, and my godson said, I guess I have to remain humble. You need to, and when you play a sport like football, it does humble you, because you will not be on top all the time. And you know, that's one of those things that you learn, just to show a bit of humility when you play the game.
You often say that you can learn as much from losing as you can learn from winning.
Yeah, well, you know, when things aren't going well, I think that's the time when you learn a lot about people. I've been on some teams where guys quit because, you know, the team wasn't doing well, and they quit. And if I'm going to lay myself out there on the line, I want to know that the guys who I'm playing with have the same kind of mindset, that, you know, if there's something to play for, I want you to lay it out there. If there's nothing to play for, I want you to lay it out there, because, you know, you don't just step on the football field and be passive. You have to bring it on the field. And the one thing that I've sort of learned, you know, you mentioned that I went to 9 Pro Bowls. I went to those Pro Bowls during a time when the players from the other teams voted for you to go.
Right.
It wasn't your teammates, but the players on the other team. And I learned that even though the team might not be doing well, you have to do your job. And even when the Giants sucked, and there were times when they were awful, but because I brought it on the field, I earned the respect of the guys who I played against.
And then they elected you to the Pro Bowl.
And they're the ones who voted for me to go, because when you play a sport, you can fool the coaches. You can fool your teammates, you know, thinking that you're going through the motions and you're doing everything just right. But the one thing that you can't fool is that person in front of you. You cannot fool them. They know when you're bringing it. They know when you're playing your best, and they know when you're not. And I think I was sort of validated, you know, giving my all during a time when, you know, so many guys around me probably gave up. And I learned a lot, you know, through those situations. And, you know, you sort of continue to live your life knowing that a guy gave up on you or gave up on the team when the team needed them. And so, for the most part, I respect most of the players who I played with. There were one or two who sort of kind of gave it up, that I don't necessarily, you know, I'm good with them, but I also know that, you know, they didn't come through, or they didn't, you know, maintain that level of dignity that I thought they should have maintained.
Well, we're going to make this interactive, and we're streaming this live, so make sure when the camera's on you that you don't make funny signs or make a fool of yourself, you know. You don't want your friends to see you doing that, right? So when we're live, cameras may be shooting around, just be aware of it. We have a gentleman in the back with this question. Why don't you state your name and what school you go to?
Hi, my name is Dakota Fincham. I'm a senior at Wayndale High School. I want to know what it was like growing up in the South during the Jim Crow and Civil Rights era.
You know what? I don't think anyone has asked me a question like that. It was very interesting because I sort of grew up during an era in which I remember as a kid, there were separate water fountains, one for blacks, one for whites. There were different sections of the theater, one for blacks, one for whites. Going to a restaurant where you had to go to a takeout window to get food, as opposed to being able to go and sit down. And so I've lived through that. but I always remember it. And I always remember the way that people treated me from that era. The way that some people would call me boy and look down at me. And that never leaves you. It never left me. But it's great that I had the opportunity to play football and to rise to the level in which I was able to rise to. And for me, show those people who called me boy or who never thought that I would amount to anything that I'm more than just a boy, that I'm a man. And not only that, I think been a good role model for the people of Florence, South Carolina, and the state of South Carolina. On the field as an athlete, but also off the field with some of the activities that I've been a part of graduating from high school, graduating from college with honors, and to be able to do the things that I do now. And the reason why I'm sort of going through this whole thing very, strategically is I am absolutely no different than anybody in this room. You young men, you young women. There's absolutely no difference. I grew up poor. I grew up in the city part of the country, I guess. And, there were times when, I came home and the lights were off and I thought maybe we had a storm or something and that's the reason why we didn't have lights, but, we didn't pay the bill or anything like that. So, I sort of came from not necessarily an environment where I had a silver spoon in my mouth, but, I'm very grateful for the sacrifices that my parents made and the things that people may have said to me along the way to sort of keep me on the right track, and to be able to represent where I've come from and to make them proud of me and to show those people who looked down on me as a youth that I had possibility, that there were things that I could do to sort of distort the notion of being a boy or not expecting anything of me. And so, it was very interesting growing up. Don't hate anybody, but I do have a newfound appreciation for my family, and especially my mother and father, who my father had probably an 8th grade education, and my mother likewise, and they never had the opportunities. And the reason why I'm here today is I want everybody to understand the importance of education, because there were people who told me over and over and over, make sure you get your education, because that really is the great equalizer. If you're educated, you can do anything you want. And I found that to be the case. And so as you're sitting here today, or if you're virtually someplace else, don't slouch down, don't fall asleep. Use this as an opportunity to learn something, because you're always going to remember this day. And so, it's an honor to be here, but I'm also very honored that you asked me that question.
Harry, well, since he asked you that question, I think it might be relevant that we share with the audience another organization that you've worked very hard with. You served as the executive director of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, and that goes to the issue of race, race in the NFL. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what you've done?
Well, the Fritz Pollard Alliance is an organization that represents minority coaches, scouts, game day officials, general managers, in an effort to create a greater sense of diversity within the National Football League. And The reason why I enjoy doing it, I never had a desire to go into coaching. I remember sitting in my meeting room with the coaches my last year with the Giants, and I asked them, what time do you get here in the morning? And they said, 7:15. I said, well, what time do you leave? And they said, 10:30 at night. And I said, well, when do you get to see your kids? And they said, well, that's tough. And I knew right then I didn't want to be a coach. But in this role, as executive director of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, I get the opportunity to advocate on behalf of many of those guys who I played with and also against, who either are coaches or who want to be coaches or scouts and so forth. But I work within a partnership with the NFL to create opportunities for minorities to sort of play on a more balanced field. And many of those guys who coached when I played did not necessarily have a voice, and they didn't have any kind of leverage or any kind of power. And so, in essence, I advocate on behalf of those who really don't have much of a voice.
I think this group would probably be stunned to find out that, in pro football today, which is over 70% African American, in 1963, not all the teams were even integrated yet.
Yeah.
So it's come a very long way, but it's because of advocates like Harry who have changed that and opened doors for other individuals, which goes to a part of our characters of our pillars of characters and fairness, and it's also citizenship, and that's caring. So there's ample ways of doing that. Now we have another question in the back here, and then we're going to go to some questions from our video conferencing schools. Say your name and your school.
Eric Cackline, I go to Wayndale. How do you feel the leadership roles on the football field and the business world are similar?
The leadership on the football field is probably no different than those in the corporate environment or even parts of families. Somebody has to be willing to step up and run lead, whether it's with a project or whether it's with anything from a family standpoint. I was talking earlier. The Denver Broncos back in 1987. 25 years later, I was able to put Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, Phil Simms, and Lawrence Taylor together as a package. When I secured them, then I got all the other guys involved. And, out of a team of 53 players, 51 came. 8 of 11 coaches came because I took ownership and I took leadership on that, and I was not going to take no for an answer by the guys who I played with and the guys who coached. And so you can't sit back and be passive. If you want something to happen, and I'm just one of those people that I don't ask other people to do it. If you want something done right, just do it yourself, and that's what I do. And I did that as a player with the Giants. If something needed to be done, I did it. And I took care of my guys. I can honestly say, and I feel good about, I have a book called Captain for Life. And the guys who I played with, they gave me that moniker because they considered me their captain, and not just for when we played, but for life. And now we have some situations, everybody's sort of aware of the issues of some former players. Especially from a neurological standpoint. And I am advocating for those guys who might be having some problems from a neurological standpoint. But in terms of leadership, and many of the qualities that you take away from the game, if you can transfer those qualities from the field into, the boardroom or into a job or whatever, then it makes you so much more valuable because everybody's looking for a leader, somebody who is a self-starter, somebody who's going to put the team first, and someone who knows what their role is, and they want to put, the entire group together to move forward together. When you're individuals, you know, you might experience a little success, but when you put everybody in the mix, that's what the great thing is about winning a Super Bowl championship. Everybody, you know, gains. Everybody gets a Super Bowl ring. So, you know, I found that many of the lessons that I've learned from the game, you know, when I apply those lessons to just everyday living, you know, life works for me.
When Mr. Carson says he has a book called
Captain for Life.
Captain for Life.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a book. He wrote that book. It's one of 2 books that he wrote.
Yeah.
So we have an author up here as well as a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Let's take one more question in the back here, and then we're going to go to our video conferencing schools.
Oh, a lady.
Hi, I'm Nikki Yoho, and I go to Early College Academy. Out of the 6 pillars of character, trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship, which do you believe are the most important and why?
Well, I think they're all important. Basically, what I'm going to say is this. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And when you treat people the way that you want to be treated, even if they don't treat you fairly, then you can smile. Then your heart can feel good. Everybody has a story. You don't know what my story is, but to an extent you do because I've been introduced and all this. I don't know what your story is. And so for me, you know, I need to treat you with kindness, respect, dignity, and I want to treat you the way I want to be treated because I don't know what's bubbling up inside. I don't know where you've come from. I don't know what you're all about. But I think that if you treat someone the way that you want to be treated, I don't think you can miss with that. You know, when you approach someone, you approach them with a smile and you're upbeat, then if there's somebody in your life who might be dealing with some stuff, the stuff that they might be dealing with might become a little bit lighter, you know, with a smile. And so, as I said, just treat people the way that you want to be treated and always give your best in whatever you do, and you can't go wrong.
It really encompasses 3, if I can point them out: respect, fairness, and caring. Those are all 3 great qualities. Okay, I think we're going to try our one of our video conferencing schools. Let's go first. Let's try, which school do we have? Lyndhurst? Or is it Lyncourt, rather?
Hey.
Lyncourt, Syracuse, New York?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jalen. I go to Lyncourt School. The number 44 is very important to our community here in Syracuse, New York. Brown, Davis, and Little left their mark on Syracuse University athletes and the community through their hard work and success. What do you hope to be remembered for both and off the field?
What do I hope to be remembered for? The thing that is most important to me is I want my kids to know that they had a father who cared about them, who loved them, who cherished them, that always had their back, and how, I want them to know how proud I am that they are the people that they are. That is the thing that at the end of the day, it's not about wins and losses, it's not about tackles, sacks, and all of that stuff, because to some degree that becomes irrelevant. It's those personal relationships that are the most important things to me. Whenever I look at this bust, it's not about what I did on the field. When I look at this bust, it's about all of those guys who I played with, who inspired me, whether it's on the pro level, whether it's on the college level, whether it's on the high school level, or whether it was in elementary school and we took a little milk carton and we put rocks in it, and we didn't have a team, but whoever picked up the milk carton, you know, they're like dead meat because everybody was gonna, that is what I think about with this. And, you know, and I think about all of those people who did something good to help keep me on the right track for me to be the person that I am today.
We have Williams Middle School from your hometown, Florence, South Carolina. Are we able to connect there?
Yes. Yes?
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead and state your name and ask your question of Mr. Carson.
I'm Taryn, and I wanted to ask you, how do you feel as an adult that you are continuing to shape your character?
You know, as an adult, you know, quite frankly, life is sort of easy for me because I can just be myself. And the way that I am, I think, I have this sort of intimidating look, you know, like this mean look, like people don't want to approach me because they're afraid. But I'm really the nicest guy in the world. And
sometimes.
Well, if you put me on the football field, it might be a different story. But, you know, I enjoy living my life the way that I am and being an example of kind of to dispel any kind of misconceived notions that, you know, football players are dumb, that they have no class or anything like that. And, you know, I try to just sort of live my life the best that I can to elevate the lives of other people. And I want all of you at Williams Junior High to know that I went to Williams Junior High from the 7th grade to the 8th grade. And so you are walking in my footsteps, me having gone to Williams Junior High. And again, I want to encourage all of you at Williams Junior High School and all of you in this room, and all of you who are being part of the video conference, to understand that when I was at Williams, I was just like you. If I came into a group setting like this, I probably would have been slouching in my seat like some people in here might be doing right now. I might be a little bored and a little tired because I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night, and I probably might be dozing off and everything. But I want you to know that there is absolutely, and I keep saying this, there's absolutely no difference between me and you and where I've come from. I know all about Florence, South Carolina. I know all about Williams Junior High School. I know all about Wilson High School. I know all about South Florence High School, and on and on and on. I know where you've come from. I feel you. You all have greatness within you. When I was at Williams, nobody told me that I would be a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Nobody told me that. When I was at Williams Junior High, nobody told me I have the opportunity to write books. Nobody told me that. When I was at Williams, nobody told me I'd have the opportunity to do a show on television with the Giants. Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that I'd have the opportunity to meet the president and all of these high-powered individuals. Nobody told me that. So the challenge that I want to leave with all of you is understand that you have greatness before you. You're all capable of being great, and you're all capable of respecting and getting respect. And the only thing I want you to do is be the best that you can be. And no, it might not lead you to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but it will lead you to other places that you can't even see right now. You can't even see it. You can't even think of it right now. So make the most of the opportunities. Use this. While you got on a bus and you came here, you're still in class because you're learning. And I've seen so many kids, and I've talked to kids all over the place, whether they're in school or whether they're in prison. And there's some kids who are incarcerated. They're not necessarily bad people, but they've done some dumb stuff. And everybody is worthy. And again, all of you guys at Williams Junior High, I've been there. And if stuff can happen to me, it can happen to you. Like I said before, I wasn't the biggest, fastest, strongest, and all of that stuff. I was not the most gifted. And actually, I was kind of clumsy as an athlete. I was a little clumsy, and I wasn't the best student, but you got to work. And I worked to become a pretty good athlete, and I worked to become a pretty good, I don't want to say intellectual, but I'm not the dumbest person around, and I'm pretty good from an educational standpoint.
I think you're pretty darn good.
Standpoint.
You use the term, there is a stereotype, or there used to be, it's not so much anymore, where they used to talk about athletes they're not rocket scientists. You ever hear that term, you're not a rocket science? Well, there was this gentleman that came to visit us one day, and he had tried out for 2 pro football teams and didn't make it. He got cut by the Detroit Lions, got cut by the Dallas Cowboys. But he had his education, and he went on to become a rocket scientist. He flew one of the last space shuttle missions for the U.S. government. I mean, as Harry says, you may not even realize what you're going to be in the future. That gentleman thought he was going to be a pro football player. He became an astronaut. So, you set your goals high.
You do not know where you're going to end up in this world. It's interesting that, when I played, they gave us playbooks. And the playbook was like this thick. And when you went to training camp, you were responsible for learning everything in that playbook. Now, when you played a game, your playbook might have been that thick. But if anything happened on the field that we didn't prepare for during the course of the week, and if the coach had to make adjustments, you were responsible for everything in that playbook if he had to go back and do it. And so, most people get this misconception that athletes are just physical. Well, when I was in college, everything, the game was 20% mental and 80% physical. When you get to the NFL level, it is 20% physical and 80% mental. You got so much you have to know, and you can't think about it, you have to know it, and you have to be responsible for it, because there's a reason why guys run 4.240s and 4.340s, because when you have to make an adjustment and you have to think about it, by the time you've come up with an answer, he's gone. He's dancing in the end zone. And so, learn as much as you can learn, not necessarily about, being an athlete, but you don't know where life is going to lead you. It might lead you someplace, completely different than what you might be thinking about right now.
Let's go to our video conferencing schools again about Minshew Elementary in McKinney, Texas. Are you with us? I don't hear anything. Let's give them a second. Minshew in Texas.
Hi, my name is Dwight Samuel. I'm from 4th grade at Minshew Elementary. I want to know have you ever shown an attribute of responsibility on the field when my example is, for an example, it's if you caught the ball and you've been out of bounds, but the refs didn't see it, have you ever did you take responsibility for that?
Well, if anything happened on the football field, the officials are there to see it. I mean, I can't really, you know, I have to be honest, you know, on the football field, you don't have a choice. And, you know, you can argue with the officials all you want. You know, back when I played, whatever decision that they made, they were going to stick with it. And now, with instant replay over and over and over, yeah, they have the option to reverse any calls that they might have on the field. But primarily when I played as a captain, it was about keeping my guys together, you know, keeping them straight, keeping them focused. And what I did was, you know, I did not allow my guys to get so distracted that they get into like not a shoving match, but a verbal match against guys that they're playing against, because then, you know, if they're distracted in some way, then that's going to affect my team. And so I wanted guys to stay out of trouble. You know, if somebody said something to them that ticked them off, you know, I tried to calm them down, you know, stay focused on what they have to do, because when you're on the football field, I mean, you have to bring total focus to what you're doing. Otherwise, you get distracted and you get sidetracked, and you know, it might be you personally, but it's going to affect the team as a whole.
So part of that, I think, is you know, you're talking about leadership.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to have leadership. And to the question you got about, you know, would you take responsibility or would you point something out? Isn't it more today, you know, as you look at the game and when you played it, that you are leading by example? You want people to follow by positive example as opposed to negative inspiration.
You know, what I found as a player, you have to have integrity as a player, that guys trust you. And you can't talk about it, you have to do it. And again, I wasn't necessarily the best player on the Giants. I wasn't the best player, but guys trusted me. And you know, as I said, you have to have integrity, and guys, and you know, players want to know, you know, where you stand, and if you're going to have their back, and you know, and put the team first, and so, you know, that was the important thing for me, is just having integrity and keeping my guys straight, keeping them focused on playing the game and not necessarily doing something dumb that's going to affect the overall team.
Okay. Let's go back to the back again. Well, you have a young man. If you would say your name and what school you're from, and ask Mr. Carson your question.
Hi, my name is Robert Thompson, and I go to STEAM Academy at Harvard. And my question is, do you feel that some NFL players today are making bad influences, and what can we do to change that?
Well, I think, you know, there are players who make bad mistakes, not just today, but, you know, it's not just something that's happening today, but there are individuals who've made some bad choices, and they've had to live with the choices that they've made. But, you know, there are a lot of players who don't understand that they are role models, even though we weren't, like, we didn't have a role modeling one-on-one class that we went to, but what you as a young person sees, you might want to try to emulate or be like someone that you see on television. Quite frankly, I would kind of discourage that, because everybody has their faults and weaknesses and so forth. If you are, because I think everybody has goodness within them. Follow the goodness that you have within yourself, and make good choices for yourself. And whatever someone else does, that's on them. And again, you know, most football players, or most athletes in general, get it, that you are impressionable, and what they do might influence you. And so they try to stay on the right track. I have a couple of guys who are friends. Victor Cruz, I'm a mentor to Victor. Victor understands where he stands with people from where he came from, Paterson, New Jersey. He understands that by him being the person that he is, that he can influence so many young people in Paterson, New Jersey, not to get involved in gang activity and so forth. Another friend of mine is Derek Jeter. And Derek Jeter certainly does get it that he is a role model, and there are so many young people who want to emulate what he has done on the baseball field, but how he has carried himself off the field. And I think, you know, there are some guys who want to do their own thing, not understanding that what they do, and if it's negative, it's going to affect, you know, younger people who sort of follow in their footsteps. I'm so happy that the schools from Florence, South Carolina are on this video conference, because the way that I conduct myself, the way that I carry myself, has to be a reflection on where I came from. And so all of you folks back in Florence, South Carolina, you know, I do the things that I do because I know that you're watching. There are things that I could have done, because if you play in New York, you can have anything. I mean, anything is available to you. But I never went down that road because I knew that I represented more than just me. I represented all of those people who I left in Florence, South Carolina. I represented, you know, the mothers and fathers of, you know, the kids who I played with. I represent now the grandchildren of those individuals who I went to school with, who are at Williams and South Florence and Wilson and so forth. And so I apologize because, you know, my brother was a Baptist minister, and I sort of get long-winded, but I just sort of wanted to make the point that I made. You know, most guys get that you are impressionable and you're going to be influenced by what they do. And I think there are so many players who are out there doing the right thing. Unfortunately, so much attention is being focused on many of those who are doing the wrong thing.
I was going to add to that, Harry. To your question, how do we change that? We do change that. You know, we have things like this, allowing you to meet positive role models like Harry Carson. And there are a lot of athletes that aren't as well known. One comes to mind that I read about recently named David Nelson. Go on and Google him sometime. He played for the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. Young 20-something-year-old. He and his brother, both in their 20s, single men, have adopted 9 children from Haiti because they saw the need. You don't read about that in the newspaper, but there's a lot of that going on in the NFL, a lot of that going on with professional athletes everywhere. That's how we change the perception, is we focus on the positive and quit focusing on the negative. So that's why we have Harry here today.
Thank you.
Do we have another question back there before you go to VC again? Okay. Your name and your question.
And all of you football players who've been exhausted by practice, who find it necessary to doze off, I'm going to call you out in a second.
Hi, I'm Marcus Morrison, and I'm from Wayndale High School. And I was wondering, when's the last time that you felt that your character was challenged?
It's a good question.
I think, you know, just being in New York and wanting to hail a taxi, and the taxi driver sees me and keeps going, and he does want to pick me up. That challenges, for me, it's like a lack of respect. And so I don't get angry, but I feel like I keep my cool and sort of move forward. But I make certain that I do all that I can for people who I encounter to be the best that I can be, and to treat them the way I want to be treated. And so that's probably the best answer that I can give you. That's sort of the latest thing, I sort of get passed up on, as someone who is just sort of standing in the street trying to hail a taxi, it can be a little frustrating at times.
Okay. We want to try and go back to our VC. Is that okay? We're going to try and hook up with one of our video conferencing schools again. Lynn Court School in Syracuse, New York. Are you still with us? Okay, they're coming up in 1 second here. Lynn Court, would you like to ask Mr. Carson a question? Okay, I'm getting a signal no, that we're not getting the audio. Okay. All right, we're going to come back to the live audience then. Young lady in the back, if you'd like to tell us your name and what school you're from.
Hi, I'm Lyric Pennington, and I'm from Sheffield Middle School.
Welcome.
Hi. My question is, if you haven't played football, what would you do for a living?
I probably would have been a teacher. I was prepared to teach. I just sort of fell into football. I was credentialed to teach. And so it's very interesting that while I played football, I've always sort of been a teacher at heart. And so I've sort of used those skills as a teacher to talk about some of the issues that have been sort of on the radar for the NFL, whether it's talk about the benefits for retired players, the pensions of retired players, and then the whole issue of traumatic brain injury and concussions and so forth. I've spoken, quite a bit about those issues. Much like a teacher, it's just sort of sharing my story with many who are willing to listen. And so if it wasn't as a teacher, I probably would have been military, because I'm from an Air Force family. I took ROTC when I was in high school, and I've always had a fascination with flying and jets and so forth, and I probably would have been, like a 25-year veteran. Hopefully I would have been like a general by now. So that's probably what I would have done.
Would you give a shout out to Harry's son who was in the military?
Yeah, I do have a son who is in the Marines, and he's stationed in Okinawa right now. So shout out to my son, Lucky.
Well, speaking of family, let's try and go back to your hometown again. Williams Middle School from Florence, South Carolina is still with us. Maybe you'd like to ask a question of Mr. Carson.
Yes.
There we go.
My name is Brittany Williams from Williams Middle School, and I wanted to know how important is accountability on the field and off the field?
Well, when you are on the field, you have no choice but to be accountable. If when you play a game on Sunday afternoon, and there are 82,000 people in the stands, and you got play-by-play and color announcers and so forth, whatever you do, they're going to call it. And so you have to be accountable from that standpoint. You can't blow it off on someone else. But then when you go in on Monday to watch film, and everybody's sitting there, and the coach is running that projector or whatever back and forth, and it's a play that you may have screwed up, that you have no choice but to be accountable for it. And you have to own up to it. And for me, I wasn't perfect as a player on the football field, but I was accountable, and I took responsibility for things that I may have done or may not have done. And I couldn't wait until Wednesday, because Wednesday is the preparation, the beginning of preparation for another week. So if I didn't have a good game, in the past game, I can't wait until Wednesday to get started and redeem myself off of something I might not have done or may have given up a touchdown or whatever. And so you have to be accountable. And that has sort of flowed over into my personal life, that if I do something, like I said, I'm not perfect, but if I do something, I freely admit, I screwed up, I didn't get it right, and you acknowledge what has happened, you try to correct it, and you sort of move forward. I mean, that's the most important thing that you can do. Acknowledge it, recognize what happened, and try not to let it happen again.
I would like to add to that for just because I think the question was a little bit about accountability off the field. Off the field, Mr. Carson is the 2012 MVP award recipient for Lifetime Achievement of the United Way. He is also the Man of the Year for the Walter Camp Football Foundation, and was also honored by the Mental Health Association of New York City. So you can see he's very accountable to his community off the field. He's taken his life lessons, shared them with others, and has worked towards the betterment of others. Now we're running out of time, so we have a couple questions in the back. We have a young lady coming up, and if you'd say your name and what school, and ask Mr. Carson your question.
My name is Janiyah McIntyre, and I go to Altitude Academy at Crenshaw. My question is, do you think of yourself more as a role model or just another football player?
I think of myself as the mother of I'm the son of my mother. And I never really considered myself a football player, because I always looked at myself as something more than just a football player. I was someone who just played football. I just sort of fell into it. But what was that question again?
More a role model?
Yeah.
Or just
you know what, I have my faults and weaknesses, but I also understand that there are people who I have influenced over the years. And what's very interesting is I played like a long time ago, before any of you were even thought of. So there are people who I continue to encounter who will tell me how important I was in their life because of what I did, and I inspired them in some way. I talked a little bit earlier about how there are people who inspired me to get here. There are people who never made the Hall of Fame who I've inspired in some way. And so in some ways I've been a role model, and I've understood that I belong to certain people. I belong to my family, and I belong to the folks of Florence, South Carolina. And so I just always considered myself my mother's son, and I've tried to live my life in such a way that my mother would be proud of what I've done. And bottom line, that's it. When you're dealing with dad, it's one thing to deal with dad. But when you deal with mom, and mom is like really happy, then that's it. You get the fried chicken, and I mean, she take good care of you and everything. You get to sit on her lap and all of that stuff. So, I just wanted to please my mom, and all of the things that she tried to instill in me, I've tried to implement those things just in living my life. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more question, and then we have to wrap it up. So, your name and your school.
Hi, I'm Ethan Smith. I'm from STEAM Academy. I was wondering if the fame and money was a lot to handle during your NFL career, and how did you deal with it?
Well, fame is fleeting. You can be famous, for a little while, but at some point, nobody's going to really care. They don't know who you are. You know, I live a very interesting life in that, you know, I played with a great player, Lawrence Taylor. So if you mention the name Lawrence Taylor, you know, people know who Lawrence Taylor is because, you know, he revolutionized the game. He's Hall of Famer. And, you know, he was on Dancing with the Stars and movies and all of that stuff. But I like to call myself Avis because Lawrence Taylor is like Hertz. Everybody knows about Hertz. Avis, they had this motto, Avis tries harder. Nobody really knows who I am because like when I'm in New York, I'm walking the streets, nobody really know who I am because by the time I get past them, then they might say, oh, that was Harry Carson. Well, for Lawrence Taylor, you know, there are people sort of following him and all of this stuff. And so I don't get to have to deal with all of that stuff like Lawrence Taylor. So in a way, I appreciate, you know, people not necessarily knowing who I am. In terms of the money, at some point, the money's going to be gone. You know, I played during a different era, and the one thing that I've learned in playing the game is all that you have, and I want everybody to listen very closely, all that you have can be taken in the blink of an eye. You can have $20 million and it can be gone just like that. You know, whether you have an accountant who embezzles money from you and then it's all gone, or you have some kind of accident, you get sued, it's all gone. And so you don't really tie yourself to the money. The fame and the money, it all goes, but you have to be comfortable with who you are. And so I'm very happy with, you know, who I am and the life that I've lived. Thank you, sir.
All right, and that's it for us today. I want to have a nice round of applause for our special guest. And thank you all who joined us here live, and thank you to the schools who joined us through video conferencing. Have a nice day. Thank you.